So Blizzard announced recently that they're gonna do a few changes to the cards that are currently in the standard pool from the classic set, and those cards are gonna rotate out. I believe it's 6 cards that they feel are gonna limit design space or they're seeing too much play, so they're deciding to rotate them out so that we don't see them in standard anymore. And the first card is Azure Drake. I've never really found this card to be too strong. It's not really the type of card where it's, please, my opponent, don't have Azure Drake on 5. It's not really that type of a card that really feels too powerful, but I think that just how flexible it is and just how overall solid it is. It provides card draw, provides spell power, so pretty much any deck, reliably reaches, turn 8 or 9 or so. Also benefits from the spell power and the card draw. They don't mind including this card in the deck, especially with Spare Claws now and Shaman and everything. You pretty much see this in most decks right now, and I saw a stat, it's actually the most played card right now in standard, so yeah, it makes sense to rotate it out. I wouldn't mind if they kept it in the pool, especially because of the dragon synergies. They introduced a lot of the cards recently, like Dragon Operative, for example. I think Wormrest Agent as well has been like, it's a card that's not going to rotate out, although I'm actually not 100% sure. Maybe not that one, but at least Dragon Operative, it's a little bit unfortunate to see some of these dragon cards which are introduced recently, but they might not see any play if they aren't given any more support in the future expansions. So I think it's fine that they rotate it out, but I wouldn't mind it too much if they just kept it, but I guess it makes sense. The next card is Sylvanas. The reason that they're giving for Sylvanas is actually that they're going to release cards in the future which work around a Death Rattle effect. So let's say it's something like a card that has the effect of like activate a Death Rattle in your hand or something like that, then probably taking control of a random enemy minion would be too strong, and that makes sense to me. Other than that, I actually quite like Sylvanas, and I don't think that it's too powerful, at least right now. It's not seeing that much play. It's been rotated out of a lot of decks which you would consider it to be good in. And mostly what I like about Sylvanas is actually that it creates a lot of decisions for both players. The first player is to think, do I want to play Sylvanas on this board? Is it too easy for him to deal with it? The opponent then has to consider, do I want to kill Sylvanas? If so, how do I want to kill it? Or can I just ignore it and go face? How exactly does it punish? And then there's a lot of, if you do decide to trade in, there's a lot of sequencing. Exactly how do I trade? Do I want to play minions before I trade? And so on. So I think that it is quite a complex card, and I think that it's like a skill-intensive card. So in that respect, I don't actually like it that much that it's being rotated out. But, it all depends on what they're releasing in the future, and, I'm not the game designer, so it makes sense, I guess. The next card's Ragnaros. I think that, Ragnaros is probably a little bit too strong. Right now, I wouldn't say it's like too overpowered, but obviously a lot of these changes are looking at the long term. It's not just the immediate short term. I think that the only neutral card that they really printed that competes with Ragnaros has been Dr. Boom, right? And they don't exactly want to release another Dr. Boom just in order to compete with Ragnaros. So I do think that he just kind of outshines a lot of the other late game drops, at least in the neutral section. Obviously Tyrion would be a stronger pick, but I don't mind this rotating. The randomness aspect isn't as big of a deal, I don't think. A lot of the times you set up like a scenario where either it goes face and then you have lethal, or you set up lethal, or it kills the minion and then you have board control, so you don't mind it too much either. But yeah, I can see them not wanting to print cards that are stronger than Ragnaros just to have them be able to see play. The next card's PO. I think actually just this entire group, PO, Icelands, Conceal, the reason for their nerfs are all very similar. It's just to increase interactiveness, like not being just, one guy's playing harsh and the other guy's not really doing much. PO, it's purely just the OTK combo, I think, along with it being, sort of strong in general. Although right now I wouldn't consider it to be, especially with, in the most recent Zulok, it didn't even see play, and it's being rotated out of a lot of arena locks recently as well. But yeah, long term, sure, I see it. Although Emperor is also rotating up, so the Leroy combo is not possible without the coin. So, it'd have to be like Wolf Rider double PO Faceless, which is only 22 damage. But yeah, obviously, it can limit their future design. They just don't want to see people dying from 30 all the time. Obviously, same story with Icelands. not exactly happy to see Ice Lance rotate out. Just for me personally, I mean, I really enjoy playing Freeze Mage, but, maybe playing against Freeze Mage is not the most fun. When they start freezing your board, it's just like one person's playing Hearthstone, the other guy's just sitting there passing with a full board and, a ton of minions in hand that you can't really do much. So, sure, makes sense. Balance-wise, Ice Lance is nowhere near overpowered, but they just don't want to see Freeze Mage existing in Standard. And the last card, Conceal, yeah, it's sort of the same situation. If you go Auctioneer Conceal, you'd have to include some pretty specific tech cards in most decks to deal with it. Some decks definitely can deal with it, but it can be like RNG based, like Kazakis or Brawl. So having a Concealed Auctioneer, and it's just one guy playing Hearthstone, the other guy's not really doing much. So yeah, it all makes sense in terms of interactiveness. These are all cards that I personally like. It just kind of fits my playstyle of like, I just kind of prefer decks which are skill intensive. You get rewarded for your decisions. I think that this type of deck is better for the competitive scene as well. Like if you compare, Freeze Mage or like combo Reno Lock compared to like a Secret Paladin, you'll see a much bigger difference in playing skill between your average legend and the best player in the world. But obviously this doesn't mean that Blizzard won't introduce skill intensive decks, but I do hope that they realize this at least. So that's it for the nerfs. I think balance wise it doesn't change too much. Like class wise, most of it will depend on which cards are released in the next expansion. We'll have to see and exactly which cards, for example, for the Sylvanas they'll be introducing. We'll see how it makes sense in the future with which cards they release. But overall, I think just any sort of change is good. It's refreshing. Makes metagames more fun when you don't just auto-include all these old cards, which you've already seen before. Personally, I think I'll miss Ice Lance the most. It's just a personal preference. I really enjoy playing Freeze Mage. It's pretty much gone now, 100%. It was already not good. Emperor was already rotating out. So we really weren't going to see much of Freeze Mage either way, I'm pretty sure, but they just wanted it gone for the future. So I understand it. I understand the logic. Personally, I would have liked to see it stick around. And as for the cards I'd like to see rotate out, it would probably be... one card I'd like to see rotate out is Flametongue Totem. I think that especially with patches right now, I guess the Small Time Buccaneer nerf maybe fixes it in Shaman, but we're really seeing the power of Flametongue along with cheap charge minions. The power level of that card is really crazy, especially when you're able to full clear your entire the opponent's board, because the weakness of a 0/3 minion is that a minion could trade into it and it doesn't take any damage, so it kind of kills for free. But if you fully clear your opponent's board, then they have to deal with it as if it's a 4/3 or a 6/3 minion after it's already done its job. So Flametongue Totem is like a really, really powerful card, which it could be one of the candidates if Shaman continues to be really powerful. Another card I'd like to see rotate is Fiery War Axe. Obviously, Fiery War Axe is one of the most powerful cards in the standard set, maybe competing with Innervate. This card is also played in every single warrior. Tempo Warrior, Dragon Warrior, Control Warrior, Pirate Warrior. You're just always playing this card. I think the only build that's ever rotated out one of the War Axes is the Patron Warrior. Obviously back then you had double Despite, so yeah, the card's extremely powerful. Maybe they're thinking that it's hard to have a substitute. Obviously it really, really gimps the warrior class as a whole if they were to rotate it out. They really need some sort of replacement, but it's one of those like cards that you just see in every single deck, and it's also... it can really determine just the early game. If you're playing, if I play Mana Worm on turn 1, it's like the difference in win percentage between them having this one card and them not having it is huge, right? Because Warx, it kills the Mana Worm and it also kills probably the next minion that you play. Whereas it just goes unanswered if you don't have it. So I think it's fine that they keep it. Obviously, they need to balance largely around that if they were to remove it. And the last card I'd like to see rotate is Edwin Van Cleef out of the Rogue set. Right now, you're seeing how the card really plays out, right? You make a huge Edwin. If it goes unanswered, it also happens on like turn 2, turn 3, turn 4. So it happens really early in the game, and it's just like, either I have this silence or hard removal, or I lose the game. It's not particularly skill intensive, it's not super difficult to build the big Edwin. You just kind of play all your cards, and it really decides. It just makes a lot of games just automatic wins. It doesn't really feel like you're playing Hearthstone. Balance wise, obviously Rogue would need maybe something to help them a little bit because it's obviously a very, very powerful card right now in Rogue. Yeah, I think it's just one of those cards that it kind of cheeses out games, and it's just really not that fun to play against. So yeah, those are probably the 3 cards I would rotate out. And I think that's it for the video.